Pandora Dumas, and I am in Business 115, Business Law. And today we're going to talk about Susan's ethic case. But before we get started, let's talk about what does ethics mean. What is the definition of ethics? And so ethics is what governs a person's behaviors. It's the morals and the values and the integrity of a person. So let's give a little background history about Susan. So Susan is a freshman student in college who did very well in high school. She's a first-generation college student. The first semester, Susan went to class. She thought everything would be perfectly fine in class, so she just kind of attended class and didn't do so well. She ended up on academic probation her first semester. When she went to speak with her academic advisor, she was made aware that she had to take at least 6 classes and she had to have a minimum of a B in those classes in order to continue to proceed in school without losing her financial aid. So Susan had to repay some funds back because of some of the classes that she had failed. And the next semester she enrolled in 6 classes. She knew she could do it. So she attended classes, went to the library, studied very well. But there was one class that she didn't care too much for, and that was her world history class. And so Susan always put that work to the back burner. So by doing that, she procrastinated and was not doing as well in class. So she went to see her professor. So she wanted to know, what can I do to get a B in this class? So the professor explained to her, there is an end of grade assignment that is due that's worth 40% of your grade. If you do very well on this, it's pretty much cut close that you could make a B. So Susan decided to work very hard. However, it was time for break. So Susan went to the beach with some of her friends and stayed an extended period of time. Unfortunately for Susan, when she got back to look at the work, although she prepared to complete this assignment before she left and went on break, she did not realize the extent of the assignment. So when she got back from break, she didn't have all the time that she needed. So she just started working effortlessly in the library, trying to catch up her work and doing what was right when no one was looking. However, as time got closer and closer, she was in a crunch, and then she also had some tiredness and some other methods and things that was prohibiting her to do a good job. So she started copying and pasting, rewriting, paraphrasing, and things of that nature. So she submitted her paper, and when she submitted her paper, quite naturally, she thought maybe the professor had so many papers he would not notice that she had plagiarized some areas in her paper. However, he did. So the professor sent for her to come in early. When she got there, it was just her and a witness, which was another professor, and they talked about her paper. So one of the things in this video that we're going to talk about is, what would you do as a professor? If this was your student, what would you do? So when we had the opportunity to look at several things, which was some inserts from her paper, we also had a handout from the plagiarism handbook from Randolph Community College. And we also had a video that we could look at that was called Ethical Decision Making and Ethical Test video. Those tests talked about 5 different tests. And the 5 different tests was honesty test, legal test, conscience test, consequences test, and publicity test. So in the video, we would want to correlate what was Susan's deal and what related to the video. So let's go back to say, what as a professor, what would you have done? As a professor, what I would have done for Susan, knowing that after we talked and knowing her situation, that if she did not pass my class, that she would be expelled from school, she may have to pay back her financial aid. What I would do was, I think I would give her an incomplete. And what that would do for her is that would give her an extended time to take the class and finish that project. She would have an incomplete on her end of grade, and it will not hurt her once she was able to resubmit the paper. So I will give her an opportunity to resubmit the paper in her own words, because things happen. And I know that most people say, well, she knew better. She plagiarized. She should not have went on her vacation. She should have paid more attention. But things happen and you learn. But there are some things that's put in place in college that's not like high school and other times, such as withdrawing, which was too late for that, taking a failing grade, which you don't want to make the student fail. You want to retain the student, giving her an incomplete, giving her the opportunity to come forth and do what was right when no one's looking. That's called the integrity. And that's the part of your ethics. That is what governs your behaviors. So what I would do is I would allow her to take an incomplete in the class. I will let her redo the paper, resubmit the paper, and then hopefully she would make a well enough grade that she would at least get a B in the class so that she could move on to her grade, her future classes and graduate and be a successful student. So let's talk about some of the tests that pertains to the video that we talked about or looked at on the YouTube, the ethical decision making and ethical test. The first thing was honesty. Was she honest when she submitted that paper? No, she was not honest. She knew she had plagiarized that paperwork, but she thought that the professor was so busy that he would not even recognize that she had plagiarized her test, her paper in world history. So was that right? No, not really. So she did have some ethical issues when it came down to honesty. And that is something that she and I would talk about if I was her professor. And we would talk about what would we do different moving forward. The next thing is legal test. Was it legal what she did or was it illegal? Well, by the law of the land, it was not quite illegal to do that, but there was some legal ethical issues pertaining to her paper. She plagiarized someone else's paper, and that can go with severe times or if it was profound, if it could be found to be profound. So there was some legal issues there for her, but we would talk about that, educate her on that, and make sure she understands going forward. This is not something that you want to do. Now, consciously, what was you thinking when you submitted this paper? That would be the discussion I would have with Susan. She did submit this paper knowing that she had plagiarized it. So conscientiously, she submitted this paper knowing that this probably was not the right thing to do. So what we would do was discuss this. We would talk about, hey, is this the right thing to do? Would you do this going forward? The next thing is the consequences. What are some of the consequences that Susan would suffer behind submitting a plagiarized test? It is like a snowball domino effect. Susan submitted the paper, Susan failed that grade. In turn, she failed the course. Failing the course means she is no longer able to stay in school. She can't receive financial aid. She had to go back home to her parents and tell them what happened. So what do you want the consequences to be when you're talking about academic integrity? So this consequences could have been really big for her as a professor if she was to just get a failing grade. That's why I would give her an incomplete and allow her to redo it. I know the consequences are bad, and she would have to suffer some consequences, but not so severe that she could not return back to college. So one of the things would be getting the incomplete and having to take extra time in the time where she should be at break for the summer, having to take the extra time to go back to the library and work through the summer. So that would be some of the consequences. I wouldn't let her quite get off easily, but at the same time, I would not punish her so severely that it would affect her future. Publicity, that's the next thing, publicity test. Would you want to go home and tell your family, who in turns tell church members or community members or other families? Or what about your future employer? What about your future employer? Now your integrity may be in question if your future employer knew about this. So that's the publicity. We have to make sure that when these things are happening, as from the professor standpoint, we want to make sure that we're doing what's right when no one's looking in terms of the students, making sure that they are retained and able to have a good, healthy future and learn from some of their mistakes. But as a student side, we have to understand there are cause and response. There are responsibilities that we have as a student, and plagiarizing is severe, and in college it is very important And a lot of things can happen behind that, like you could lose your financial aid, you could be put out of school, you could have failing grades, and it's a domino effect. So that's my summary on the case with Susan's ethic. I would allow her to redo it, give her an incomplete in class. I know that she had some things that she could have thought better. She could have made better decisions. But at this time, this would be a learning curve for me, or a learning event for that student. So again, thank you. My name is Pandora Dumas. I'm in Business 115, Business Law. And if you have any questions, please about the video that I'm submitting, please email me at padumas. Please feel free to email me at padumas.students.randolph.edu. And again, thank you very much for allowing me to submit the ethic case on Susan. Thank you.